You're listening to the Uplevel Your Online Business Show, where wealth is empowering, purpose is crucial, and high vibes are non-negotiable. And now, here's your host, certified business coach and practical woo strategist, Sara J. Loureiro.
All right, welcome everyone. I am so excited to have Brooke Schultz on the podcast today because she is one of my all-time favorite entrepreneurs. We have been business besties, which is kind of the point of this specific episode for a few months now. Brooke is a business coach for highly driven women entrepreneurs. And let's begin. Welcome, Brooke.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about what it is exactly that you do and, like how you came to this point within your business.
Awesome. So I will give you like the 30-second rundown so I don't do the whole podcast. So my name is Brooke. My background is actually in therapy. So I was a marriage and family therapist and a mental health counselor before I started my business. And I started my business actually as a life coach, so not as a business coach. And it was just kind of the obvious next step for me as a therapist to go into life coaching. And I was able to build my business to 6 figures in 6 months. And so that's kind of like the platform I talk about a lot. And I started having a lot of clients coming to me like, hey, Brooke, help. Like, how did you do that? And it was awesome for me because I was able to show people that you don't have to be giving people a financial ROI in order to make substantial income. And so that was kind of the turning point for me where I transitioned into business coaching. So now that's exactly what I do. I help people, specifically women entrepreneurs, hit 6 figures, multiple 6 figures in their businesses as well. So that's a little bit about me.
Amazing. And I didn't know that entire story. That's awesome.
You didn't?
And no, I didn't know like all of that background. What I find was really interesting too is that Brooke and I were kind of like, okay, what are we going to talk about on this episode? And I asked Brooke, I was like, do you want to talk about hitting 6 figures in 6 months? Because, like that's a huge, huge accomplishment for you. Or, like, do you want to talk about, like your mastermind and like all of these things that Brooke has been able to achieve? And then I was like, or do you want to talk about the importance of having like a business bestie? And Brooke was like, all of those other things are really cool. I talk about them a lot, but I feel like the business bestie thing is like really what we need to talk about because there's so many women out there who just don't have that, right?
Yeah, it's a huge thing that so many people like don't think is important, or like we'll see people be like, hey, this is my biz bestie. But then like shrug it off and don't incorporate it into their businesses. And it's so important. So it's really nice to like be able to come on and talk with my biz bestie about having one. And I think something that's important that like a lot of people don't realize is like you can go out and you can look for a biz bestie. But like it's the same thing as like going and having like forced friendships and forced relationships. Like you have to actually find the right person that is connected to you. So like for people watching, Sara and I are at a very similar place in our business. And so like to be able to connect outside of just like our lives, right? So like we could talk about husbands, fiancés, dogs, like things like that. But then outside of that, we can talk about our business as well. So there's so many things we can connect about versus like if it were a forced friendship, it might be a little bit tougher. And then I don't think we would actually feel as comfortable and like we were getting what we needed out of our relationship.
Yeah. And I feel like with a lot of the women that we coach, and, by the way, like Brooke and I are like, we coach the exact same women as well, right? Like it's we have like a very similar ideal client avatar. And I think that one of the biggest like limiting beliefs that a lot of women have is that like you can't be friends with your competition and that you can't create relationships with people who have the same niche as you because like you have the same clients and you're going to be competing with each other. And that couldn't be further from the truth, especially when you really, like Brooke said, especially when you get someone who really, really gets you.
Right. One thing that I talk to people about a lot, which is a serious belief of mine, is that there's no such thing as competition, and ideal clients are more than just like who is your dream client. So like I truly authentically believe that the clients who sign on the dotted line to work with me are my clients. They're meant to work with me. People who sign on the dotted line for you are meant to work with you. And then maybe they work with you and then they work with me after, or maybe they work with another person and then they work with you. Like, that's how it's supposed to be. And so I don't believe in competition, like, at all. Even when it comes to Facebook groups, like, you see so often Facebook groups when people are like, no promotion. And maybe it's because you're trying to cultivate a certain type of community, and that's fine. But a lot of people, it's like, I don't want people to promote in my group because I don't want them to steal my clients. It's like, there's literally no such thing. Like, if someone
Exactly.
Facebook group signs up with someone else, they were meant to work with that person and not you. And there's a reason for it.
Exactly. 100%. And I think that a lot of the times when we come into, especially into online business, it's a really freaking lonely world for a really long time. And I know that you and I have talked about this a little bit too, but I mean, getting a coach, we know, is like so essential to growing your business, especially to the level that we have our clients who want to grow them to, which is like 6 figures, multiple 6 figures and things like that, to be like, have exponential income and impact, right? But we've also talked about, you know, how there's just some things that you really just want someone who isn't coaching you to be able to talk to you about things. Oh my goodness, I'm like losing the train of thought here, but like, to be able to talk to them about things that aren't necessarily like someone who's coaching you. So can you talk a little bit more about that, and like how you kind of decided to really seek out friendships in the online world?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I know, like, for myself, I always have my own coach. I always will have my own coach. I think it's absolutely imperative, regardless of how much my business grows. And when I am in a relationship with a coach where I'm the client, I like to use all of that time doing what it is that I signed up with them for. So like, if it's a PR coach, I want to be talking to them about PR. If it's a business coach, like, I want to talk to them about building my business. I don't want to sit and talk to them about, I'm getting a dog, or like, I'm getting married, and like, here's some fun stuff. Like, I don't want to talk to them about that, because I want to stay focused on their area of expertise and make sure that I'm getting the most out of that relationship. But with that being said, it's like what you were saying about entrepreneurship being a lonely world. Like, it can be a lonely world, or we can make it a really fulfilling, not lonely world. And so like, that to me is the beautiful thing about business relationships and friendships, is you get to have somebody who gets where you are on your journey, who you can support one another, but then also like, it makes your journey so much less isolating. Like, when you're going to an office every day of the week, Monday to Friday, even if it's people you don't like, you're around people. And people are we are meant to be social beings. And so like, sitting, even if you sit in a co-working space, but you're not really talking to anyone, it's kind of isolating. Versus having a business relationship where there's no expectations, and you can just get on a Zoom call, or you can jump on Skype and just talk. And whatever comes up, like the same way it does in a regular friendship that you would meet for coffee or like go out for dinner with.
When you have a coach, your coach is there to professionally coach you. Like, it's a much more professional relationship. So I find that like, if I have a shitty day, or if I have a shitty lunch, or if something happened that just feels really crappy, there's a very different way that I'm going to be talking to my coach about that than to my friend who's kind of like in the exact same trenches that I am. And it really helps to have both, right? Because you don't want like, it's kind of like the difference between having a friend and having a therapist, right? Like, you don't only have a therapist in life and go through life without friends, right? Although you know that your therapist is going to be helping you with all of your issues. Like, you have your friends, because at the end of the day, your friends are there to be able to help you to vent. And there are so few people who actually understand online business. And having someone there to be able to be like, wow, you got 10 unsubscribes. Like, that really sucks. Or like, you didn't hit the conversion rate that you wanted to. Like, oh my God, that happened to me once. Like, that's awful, right? Whereas your other friends just have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I also think like there's something to be said about having a friend in your industry too, who can like call it like it is in a different way than your coach will.
Mm.
Like coaches will call it like it is. I call my clients out on things. I know you call your clients out on things too. But having a friend who says it like in a different way, a lot of times is something that's really, really helpful too.
Yeah. Yes. It's so, it makes you feel so much more supported. And again, like I'm really coming back to this whole, like, no one else really understands this, right? Like there's not a whole lot of people in the world who understand what online businesses comprise of, like how they work, and like really entrepreneurship, and how it's such a massive roller coaster ride. And especially when you have someone in your industry, I find that that's just, the support there is just invaluable.
For sure. I also think like what you were talking about with having someone who gets the online space is so important. Even when you have a supportive family or supportive friends in your personal life, like it's still different. Like the story that's coming up for me is I'm very close with my family. I'm a major family girl. And my dad asks me about my business all the time. He's very supportive, and I'll tell him like, oh, I just had my first 15K cash month. And he's like, oh, great. And like the way he reacts to it is like so much different than the way people who are in the industry react. Or like when I talk to Sarah, the way she reacts, it's just so different. And so that's not to say that like I don't love those conversations with my dad. I do. They're so fun. But it's really, really nice to have business friends who you can have that conversation with as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, there's some people who have really good, really amazing supportive families, like you, for example. And then there are other people, like I have a few clients who are just like, my family is like so against everything that I'm doing, because they think it's not going to work for me, and like all of this kind of stuff. And so when you're just sitting at your computer and you're trying to make all this work, and maybe you might be watching other people's live streams because you feel really inspired by certain people who you follow and things like that, you're still not interacting with another human being about your business. And that just, it feels like you have so much more of a support system around like people who just get you.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing that I actually learned when I was studying to be a therapist that I use in my business that is super relevant to what you were just talking about is positive versus negative interactions. And there's actually a marriage therapist who he predicts with like crazy accuracy. It's over 90% accuracy whether married couples will stay together or will divorce. And he's crazy. He's absolutely a genius. But one thing he talks about is for couples that have successful relationships, for every one negative interaction they have 4 to 5 positive ones. And I think that's so cool and is so relevant in our businesses as well, especially for people that might not have families that are as supportive. Or something that I see a lot is spouses who are like super hesitant, right? Who are like, we have a home to take care of and a family to support, and you're saying you want to do what?
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like that's okay. And that's something that needs to be worked out within a relationship. But then we want that to not be damaging our business. And so for every one comment like that, we should be offsetting it with 4 to 5 of someone that's like, hey, you got it. Like
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. That's actually even taking like your mindset stuff and strategizing your mindset stuff. That's so good. That's so good. That's like such a great tip. It's just like, okay, if you have that one negative comment, go out there and look for, like those 5 that are absolutely going to make your day. That's amazing. That's awesome.
For sure. We had talked about earlier this week, a new mindset tool that I've been using. That's exactly that. Every night I write down 10 things that I can do that day. And like, then those few comments that I make to myself of like, damn it, Brooke, why didn't you do this? It's like, it almost offsets them.
I love that. And that's almost like a self-seizing way as well, right? So just like, even aside from having a business relationship, it's just like, you can even cultivate this relationship with yourself.
Yes. I love it. It's also, they're all like little parts of the puzzle. Like you have to have all of the pieces. They're all so important.
And so when you were kind of first starting out, like even within your first business, What types of relationships do you seek out, and what type of advice do you have for women who who are listening to this, who might be struggling with feeling alone in the online space? Like, what advice would you give them? And then I'm going to share mine.
Oh man. Okay. So my first piece of advice is start with hiring a coach. And I'm not just a coach who like wants you to sign up with me, like find the right coach and hire them, because the support you will get from having a business coach on your team is something that can't be met anywhere else. So step 1, hire your own coach. Step 2, be a real human being, like connect with people. It sounds so simple, but it's so often ignored. Like go to networking events in person with people who like are entrepreneurs and have no idea who you are and have never heard your name before. Talk to them, get to know them. And maybe that's not your cup of tea, and that's fine. Connect with business friends online. Find a way to connect with people and just be a human. Don't only be looking for sales. That's an important part of building a business too, and your business coach will help you get that. But like be a human, be a real person, find other people who are real people, who are in it for the long haul, who just want to build relationships and build a sustainable business. That's another huge thing too, is I really think having business friends and having these diverse types of relationships helps make your business more sustainable.
Yes.
And then I think your second question was, what type of relationships was I looking for at the beginning? It's actually funny because from day one, I knew the importance of having relationships in my business. After all, I'm a marriage and family therapist, like by nature. So I put a big emphasis on relationships. And I started looking for business friends up front, like day one. And it's just funny because it's the same thing with any relationship, right? Like there are some people you're going to connect with. There are some people you're not going to, and that's okay. Like it goes back to what we were saying about it not being a forced relationship. So Sarah, when did we meet? I don't even remember. Do you remember?
Oh my God. It like
months ago?
Must have been around like July or August, I want to say.
It
was right before I launched my group program. Yeah.
Okay. We should look that up. But so I was in business for probably almost a year before that. And I had business friends. And I still have other business friends, but there's just something about the relationship that Sarah and I have that's like, I just feel like I can say anything and you just get it. Like I can say good things, bad things, frustrating things, exciting things. And like, we just connect on that level, but you're not going to find that with everyone. And that's okay. So like, don't let yourself get burned out or frustrated or overwhelmed if you try to have a business relationship with someone and they end up trying to pitch to you, or you try to have one with someone and it just is like not a great connection. Like it's fine. You'll figure it out.
Keep going. When I was first starting out, I had no friends in the online world, like at all. 3 years ago, I started out with wellness and yoga coaching. And I joined a group program, and that was like one of the best decisions I made at that time, because some of the women in that group program, like I still talk to today. I find that group. So like, even if you feel like you don't just want to like message random people and you're like to be like, hey, let's be like business friends or whatever, which I'll talk about. I think we should both talk about that in a little bit as well. Like how to just like message, like how to create these relationships.
I've been waiting to tell you how we connect.
Yeah. We should talk about that in a bit too. But, anyway, so this group program, I ended up, really, really connecting with some of the women in it. And that it made me understand just how valuable those types of programs were. And I've done like a few other things to also have that type of connection. Like I joined a mastermind, I think it was last year, and I had a really good connection with like one or two of the women within the mastermind. I mean, like this is granted, like out of, 10 women who are in the mastermind with me, there were 2 of them who I still talk to, and that's fine, right? Like you're not going to connect with everyone. Not everyone's going to like you in the same way. And, like from those relationships, I was like, wow, this is actually really nice. Like this, it feels so good to have someone to talk to about all this stuff who like totally gets it. So that would be one of my first pieces of advice is, if you want the group support, and if you want the group support in a way where it is, in a way where like it's professional, it's paid for, it's, like it's So that's my first suggestion, is getting something that's paid, getting something that you can go through like professionally with a group of women who are the kind of like all kind of going through the same thing with you as you. It's also really nice to have something like that because you 100% get someone who is at your level.
Yeah.
But there are also so many other amazing ways to do this. And if you're more of an extrovert, or if you're more of someone who's just like, you know, has no problem with making connections, then it's so easy to like literally, if someone is really inspiring you on Instagram, or, you know, like you're posting to Facebook groups and that other person is posting to Facebook groups, you know, like add them as a friend. Like if you're commenting on each other's stuff, add them as a friend, and then just be like, hey, I love connecting with other entrepreneurs, you know, like let's have a connection call, right? Like let's get on a call. I really like your content. I really like what you're doing. And I've made a lot of friends like that. And it's not just from me initializing those connections. It's actually from them doing it as well.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh. Sophie, stop. Sorry.
Our dogs.
Yeah, so definitely, for sure. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think there's two different things that are important. One, this is a lesson that actually I did not learn from any of my coaches. I learned from my fiance. He says 3 words: thank you, next. And I think that's something that's really important to learn in business. So if you want to jump on a connection call with someone and they show up to the connection call and are trying to sell to you, even though you guys signed for a connection call, thank you, next. Like that is clearly not going to be your business friend. And that's
my pet peeve too, because I feel like there are times to call things connection calls, because connection calls should be legitimately connecting with someone else who's an entrepreneur. It shouldn't be like, let me help you as an entrepreneur. That's a different type of call.
Right. But that's an amazing thing. Like that's a plus of having business friends. Like I don't come to like our conversations like, what can I get from her? But that's like a nice plus. There are so many things I've learned just by being friends. It's the same thing with like any relationship. Like how much do you grow in your intimate relationships or even in your family relationships, right? And it's the same thing with business friends. Like you don't show up with that expectation, but it's usually like a nice side effect.
Exactly. And so let's talk to everyone about how we met and how we made that connection, because I'm sure that I know that a lot of my clients are kind of like, how do I do that? Right? Like, I'm just like, you need to go out there and you need to start talking to people. You need to start having business friends. And they're kind of like,
what?
But how? Like, how do you even do that? Right? Or like, you know, some people are jealous, or some people, you know, like don't want friends within their communities. And what I tell them, I feel like the clients who usually come up to me with that are usually the ones who have not engaged in like group programs or anything like that beforehand. But even so, even my clients who, like, I have a client who just joined a mastermind, and for her, she's kind of like, but how do I make like more friends? You know, like how do you even, you know, start this conversation? So I think that Brooke is the one who made the first move with our relationship. So talk to us about how this happened.
I feel like there are so many different ways to connect with people. And it's the same thing with like marketing strategies, right? Like there's not one marketing strategy that's going to work. And I'm always very skeptical of people who say like, I have the number one solution. It's
right.
Like, okay, that might be the number one solution for one person, but maybe not for the next.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing with building relationships. Like I've connected with so many clients in like the most bizarre ways. And it's the same exact thing for business friendships. And so one thing that I love to do personally in my business is I spend time every single day just engaging. So like jumping into Facebook groups that I really enjoy, jumping onto my Instagram feed and just like commenting on people's things. It makes me feel like more of a person rather than like a persona behind a computer.
Right.
And it allows me to connect. So that I think is where our relationship started. Like I think I had just commented on a couple of your things, and then Facebook algorithm, of course, started showing me more of your things. And so I was commenting on them a lot. And I don't remember, do you remember what happened after that? Did you message me or did I friend you?
I feel like you sent me a friend request, and like at the time too, I was just like, I really like this girl's vibe. Like I really like how inspiring and like high energy all of her stuff is. And then you sent me a friend request and you're like, hey, how's it going? And then you started talking to me about your brother's wedding. And I was like, this is really cool. Right. Like, And that immediately, you know, like when people are kind of immediately like, so like, I love connecting with entrepreneurs, like, tell me more about you or whatever. I'm just like, oh, this is, you know, like it could go somewhere. It could go into a friendship or whatever. But like, you were kind of like, I'm doing great. My brother's getting married soon. I'm so excited about it. And it was just like so genuine and so cute. And then we started bonding over our dogs. Because Brooke has a sweetheart dog and I have 2 dogs now. And yeah, and so like, you know, you bond over these like really fun things. And then at the same time, once you can bond over those really fun things and be like, hey, we have a very similar business, or like we have very similar business goals. It just makes the relationship that much more valuable, I think, in terms of like finding a quote unquote business bestie.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what's important to keep in mind is that like, there are so many ways you can connect. Just like I was saying, like, how with my clients, I found so many different ways. It's the same thing as when you're like young and you meet friends like at religious school, at school, at the mall, at the playground, on your sports team. Like there's so many different ways to connect with people, and it's the same thing with business friendships. Like you'll see in Facebook groups, looking for a business bestie, here's who I am. Like there's nothing wrong with connecting with people that way. Like that might be how you find the right.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. Like just do what feels good to you. If it doesn't feel good to you to accept a friend request from somebody who's been commenting on your things, who wants to tell you about their brother's wedding, like, then that's probably not the right business relationship for you. And that's okay. Like you have
exactly
once.
And it's like any relationship, it's like romantic relationships too. Just know that like, and I, you know, like I've been in this situation before, and I think I've talked to you about this, Brooke, where I've admired some people, I've talked to them online, and like sometimes it turns out to be a beautiful friendship. Like I remember I have this really awesome friend. She doesn't do online business that much anymore because her local business in San Diego just like completely exploded. But I messaged her just like out of a whim, just being like, maybe she's going to want to be in my summit. And she responded to me. She's like, I love your vibe. Like, let's do this. We got on our interview, and it turns out like we just kept on connecting with each other for an entire year after that. And I did not think that she was even going to be quote unquote interested in me because her business was like so much further ahead than mine at the time. But she didn't care and I didn't care. Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like on the flip side, I've also gotten a lot of rejections, and I've also gotten a few people where I've been like, oh, I really like everything that you're doing, and they don't really reciprocate. And then it you know, it feels kind of like, oh, this person doesn't like me. Right. But then we also have to remember that like, not everyone's going to like us. Right. Like why is that an issue? Right. Like, why do we have to internalize that?
Yeah, for sure. So there are 2 thoughts that I'm having right now. One, I think a lot of times we do internalize and we get like super offended, and it's back to what I was saying before of thank you next. And it's not a slap in the face to anyone or like telling anyone they're not good or they stink or anything at all. It just isn't like the right person, the right time, the right fit, the right connection, whatever it is. And I think that's okay. Like there have been so many times where I've reached out to people. There's one that's actually coming up as I'm talking where I reached out to someone. I don't even remember what I said. It was something along the lines of, hey, it's so nice to meet you. How are you? Like just a normal message. And she never responded. And then I messaged her, like, pet peeve. You can see that somebody sees your message and doesn't respond. Yeah. So I messaged her again. I was like, hey, just checking in to see if you saw my last message. And her message back was like, yeah, I only respond to people with direct inquiries because I'm very busy. And I'm like, okay. But that right there could have been a slap in the face, or I could take it as it is and be like, 2 people with 2 very different sets of priorities. Yeah. It's important to me to love every step of the way. I don't want to have a 6-figure business if I'm not enjoying it. Like I don't want to build a 7-figure business if I'm drained every day of the week. And so for me, I like responding to the messages that just say, hey, it's so nice to meet you. Or like, hey, your smile is so happy. So I had to message you. That's what I get all the time.
So, like, your smile is so happy.
Thank you. But I respond to those because like it gives me so much more purpose than just doing what I do. And that's like the second thing that I wanted to talk about is like you have to enjoy every step of the way. It's not a destination, it's a journey. And so if you can enjoy the journey, it makes the destination that much sweeter.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of community, right? Like that's the whole point of having these Facebook groups and really just being able to connect with that's social media, right? Like that's a huge part of our social media presence. One other thing that was really coming up to me too, when you're talking about 6-figure and 7-figure businesses and things like that, another big thing that I've learned throughout the years of being an online business and really searching for business friends is if you have really like dreams that some people would quote unquote call crazy, right? And like, you know, really massive goals, it's really important to also find business besties and companionships in people who are going to understand that and who are going to support it. Because there are a lot of women out there who don't want to make 6 figures. There are a lot of women out there who don't even think it's fair to make, you know, like $5,000 or even $3,000 a month. Like they exist too, and it's fine. And that's, you know, like they're on their own wavelength. But when you have like all of these amazing goals, you want to make sure that you are being supported and you're being uplifted by the people who you're choosing to spend your time with. And I think that there is nothing better than having someone in business who understands that.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. That was like beautiful. I don't even have anything to add.
And I think that sometimes it's like a little bit of a hit and miss. And it's not like you can't still stay friends with those other people who don't have these big goals. But it's just when you finally have someone who's just like, yeah, I want to make multiple 6 figures in my business too. Like I want to send waves through my industry, or I want to be able to create a gigantic impact with everything that I'm doing. And someone who like fully and truly understands that, and someone who's not just like, whoa, you're going way too fast, or like something like that, it just makes you feel so much more supported.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like support is one of the most important things you can have. I always talk about 3 things: support, systems, and strategy. Those are 3 massive, incredibly important things to have in your business. And support, like, it's almost, I'm like visualizing it in my head. I don't know how to describe it, but like, it like trickles down. Those are the 3 top things. And then if you take support, it's even bigger than just like one thing. That's what we were talking about earlier. With like, you have the support of a coach, you have the support of family, friends, intimate partners, like somebody in your personal life, you have support of business friends. And then it makes it so amazing and so fulfilling. And it makes it so that you're supported no matter what. Like if you're wanting to sit down and talk like major strategy and be supported in that, you go to your coach. If you're wanting to be supported in your emotional messness, which happens to all of us, like you go to your family, right? If you want to be supported in like your crazy, ridiculous thoughts that make no sense, you go to your business friend. If you want to like dream together, like there's so many different ways to be supported when you have all of the different support avenues.
I love it. I love it. And this really also brings me back to the whole, like, you are the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, because that is so true, right? And like, if you want to create like a very high vibe, like a very inspirational business, a very like overachieving, incredible, you know, life purpose for yourself, you want to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with the people who get it. And if you're not like immediately surrounded by that, and if like, let's say for example, for some reason, you know, like if your family just like doesn't understand it, or if your spouse doesn't understand it, like that's not the end of the world, right? Like that's why we create communities online. And I think that the more that you can share that energy and just like share that inspiration with other people, the more that you can also elevate your own consciousness, your own mindset. And then in turn, the more that you can also give that to other people.
Yeah, I love that. I always say if you go to the barbershop and sit there long enough, eventually you're going to get a haircut. And like, it's the exact philosophy of like surround yourself with good people that lift you up. If you surround yourself with, and think about it, like if you surround yourself with Debbie Downers who are negative and gossip and just like hate everything all the time, eventually that's what you will become too, right? You'll start being a little more negative. You'll start talking And it's the same thing on the flip side, right? Like if you surround yourself with people who are constantly striving to do better and be better in their businesses and in their lives, like you will do the same thing. You will be uplifted by that. And it's a really
It's so beautiful. It's so powerful. And I even just last year, or I shouldn't say last year anymore, actually, because I officially quit my 9 to 5 in December of 2017, which is, it's like, can't believe I've been like self-employed for over a year now. It's incredible. But one of the biggest things that I would always come home and I'd be like, oh my goodness, you know, like there's some people who I absolutely loved working with in my 9 to 5, like no doubt. Right. But I worked with like 200 or 300 people, like almost on a daily basis, where I would interact with so many people in my 9 to 5. And there were specific people who I just could not get out. Like I couldn't get around. So I would have to consume, you know, all of the thoughts and all of the opinions and all of that kind of stuff. And I was like, I would always tell myself, you know, like I am just dreaming of the day where I can just kind of like sit at my home office and be in complete control of who I get to spend my time with. And I'm literally in that right now. And if anyone else is kind of struggling with that, it's just like, well, I want to be high vibe, you know, like I know all of the, like, I know the importance of, you know, just like staying high energy and just like, I want to admit that, but like, I am with a whole bunch of Debbie Downers, like it gets so much better. Like it really, really does. And, you know, the more that you can create your own boundaries surrounding the people who you spend your time with and the people who you choose to share what you're doing with, that's when you're going to elevate yourself. And that's when you really start to see those people who are like high vibe all the time. And you're like, how the heck did that person do it? They create those boundaries.
Yes. And I think boundaries is the key word, because there are some people that no matter what are going to be a part of your life. And maybe they support you in your business and in your visions and in your dreams, and maybe they don't. That doesn't mean you have to cut them out of your life.
Yes.
You set the boundaries, right? Like my brother, for example, for the longest time, he was like, Brooke, what are you doing in your business? Like, and I had to set the boundaries that like I was not going to hold space for those kinds of conversations. Doesn't mean I don't love my brother. It doesn't mean I don't have an amazing relationship with him. But like there were multiple times where he was like, Brooke, why are you talking about having 5-figure months? And I'm like, because I have 5-figure months.
Because I'm doing that. It's inspiring.
Yeah. So like, there were definitely parts of him that were a little bit more down. And that goes back to what you were talking about earlier about like, not everybody has to get your vision. And that's okay. Doesn't mean I don't love my brother. Doesn't mean like I don't goof off with him and become a child every time I'm around him. I do. But like I've set those boundaries in my business that like, even if it's not like me not having conversations with him, there's still times where he'll bring it up. And I'm sure people watching this have had the same thing, right? Where it's like, okay, boundary, I'm not going to talk about it. You can only control what you bring up, right? And what you say. You can't control what someone else says. So like maybe you set that boundary that you're not going to talk to someone about something and then they bring it up. Like, how can you set that emotional boundary, right? Of like, I'll answer their questions, but like, I'm not going to allow myself to go to that place anymore.
Exactly. And that reminds me of one of my clients who's just been really, really struggling with her family, and like, she loves them, but you know, like they are all just like, don't do this thing that you're doing. You know, it's just, they don't understand it. And, one thing that I really like encouraged her to do is just like, anytime that anyone asks you about your business, all that you need to say is, it's going really well, thank you. Because it is. It's going really well, thank you. All entrepreneurs are going to have a complete roller coaster ride of like, you know, I feel like I'm doing amazing. Oh my goodness, I'm plummeted. I feel like I'm doing awesome. Oh my goodness, it wasn't as awesome as I thought. Oh my goodness, I hit jackpot. And like, it just like, we completely go through this. And not a whole lot of people understand that, but it's okay. Those people don't need to understand it. So like this whole like, it's going really well, thank you, is just something that I have personally implemented with like, you know, I literally have probably about 5 people who I share all of my business stuff with. It's like you, my coach, a few of my other business friends, and like a few close friends. And that's it. Everyone else it's going really well, thank you.
Yep, I do the same thing. And the funny thing is, like, this is a little bit unrelated, but as you were just talking about that it's going well, thank you, I was thinking about like when I'm in that plummeted space, and a lot of times the days that I go into that, oh my gosh, everything's terrible, are the days that like everything is actually going really well. And I'm like out about nothing. Like
so true.
That's typically what happens.
That's so true. And that's why mindset also like is just so important to all of this.
Yeah, for sure.
Amazing. Okay, so let's wrap all of this up. We could talk on here for hours. We're probably going to talk a little bit more after this podcast episode is done. But Brooke, what are the amazing, exciting things that you're up to right now? And where can we find you? And how can people get more of your support and your optimism and kind of like all of your amazing tips that you have to share about business?
There are so many places to find me. I'm not going to list all of them just because we'll be here until tomorrow. If you want to connect with me personally, I would encourage you to send an email to me. I'm the only one who checks my email. My support doesn't respond to my emails. They don't check my emails.
Beautiful.
Like it's myself and I. So if you want to email me, you can reach me at brooke@brookeeschultz.com. The E is for my middle name. So there should be 2 E's, BROOKEESCHULTZ. That's my email. And then if you want to connect with me and the supportive community that I've built, I'd encourage you to join my Facebook group, which is called The Happiness Entrepreneur. That's where you can find me. And if you email me, I'll send you some more places.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on here today, Brooke. I feel like this was like I feel like this is an episode that everyone really needs to consume and just be, like this is going to fill people with optimism in terms of like support systems and things like that. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was great.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Uplevel Your Online Business Show. If you enjoy our show and would like the show notes and free goodies about how to grow your online coaching business, head over to sarajlorero.com for more information. We hope you'll tune in next time.